He is the founder and CEO of Wynn Resorts. He revitalized the Las Vegas Strip during the 1980s and 90s with a group of luxury hotels and casinos. They included the Golden Nugget, Treasure Island, the Mirage, and the Bellagio. A decade later, he finished both the Wynn Las Vegas and Encore. In recent years, the company has pivoted east to Macau, where it operates 2 resorts with plans to open another later this year. I am pleased to have Steve Wynn back at this table. Welcome, my friend. And in the interest of self-disclosure, Steve Wynn's been a friend of mine and been very supportive of this program from a long time ago. One of the things you identified with are big ideas. You changed Las Vegas because you had big ideas. You saw it more than just gambling. You saw it as a place where people would come for entertainment as well as gambling. You saw the move to China. You have created with ideas for what a facility ought to be about. Big ideas are a hallmark, and you believe that they're essential not only to companies, but to the country and to progress in science and everything else.
I do.
Tell me.
You know, just a remark about my business. Over the years, as we built these hotels in Las Vegas, each one of them successively, one after the other, in order, has broken all previous records of gaming revenue for a hotel that existed before it. Caesars had the record, Mirage broke it. When Caesars won $400 million, Mirage was the first to win $500. Mirage was $500, Bellagio was $600. Bellagio was $600, Wynn was $700, Wynn and Encore did $800. What is interesting, Charlie, is that in each of those examples, never was casino revenue as much as half of the revenue. It was always more money in non-casino revenue than casino revenue, regardless. Last year, $870 million in casino revenue, $1.1 billion in non-casino revenue.
And what do we mean by non-casino revenue?
Everything: hotels, spas, shopping, entertainment, restaurants. The point is that those relationships are causal. There's slot machines and roulette tables and such equipment are everywhere. From Seattle to Miami, from Bangor, Maine to Phoenix, you can be in a gambling room within an hour and a half in an SUV. You don't even have to get on a plane. No, a gambling device has no intrinsic power. It is a source of revenue if the place itself is populated with people who like that sort of thing. But what brings people is something else: a fanciful environment, a chance to eat and shop, to relax and enjoy themselves, to have fun, and most importantly, to be well served. Because these fancy buildings, like most institutions, are what they are the day they open, but that's maybe 10% of the franchise going forward. What makes a place enduring is people, because only people make people happy. And that's the culture of my company, to concentrate on that human resource.
What's the most important thing happening first in Las Vegas today? Because I see a lot of emphasis on nightclubs.
Well, you know, your show about Hamilton is all about hip-hop.
Right.
And the changing tastes musically and cultural expression generation to generation. So the nightclubs, with the din of music, the disc jockeys, the wonderful guys like David Guetta and Deadmau5 and Avicii and all those people that work for us, it's a mating dance of sorts. And nightclubs and gatherings of young people have always been a mating dance. So ironically, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
How is Macau different than Las Vegas?
Discounting political overtones, which are quite a different thing, in terms of the motivation of the visitor and the experiential aspiration that they have, they're exactly the same as they are in America. People come to live big, to have excitement, and if they like to gamble, to test lady luck, because that has sort of an intrinsic excitement to it. So if people, you know, you get on an airplane, as I do once a month, and fly 6,000 odd nautical miles to Macau, you get off the plane and you're home again. McDonald's, Ralph Lauren stores, Colonel Sanders. Charlie, there's a very interesting lesson historically. My grandparents, like so many, came to this country during the great wave of immigration just before the turn of the last century, 1890 to 1900.
Came from?
Europe, Russia, Poland, Italy, places like that. They came through Ellis Island, and they were broke, impoverished. They took whatever job they could get in the eastern cities. They started to have children just before World War I. Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin were born in 1915 or so. My parents in 1916. They never saw a good day. They came of age in the 30s in the Great Depression. If they didn't go to war, they had defense jobs. And they came out of World War II in the late 40s, in their 30s, into one of the great periods of expansion in America.
Post-World War II.
What's amazing during the post-World War II period is these people who had never seen a good day believed that anything was possible in America. If their kid could get a better education than them, maybe he could be president of the United States. And they had an optimism and a belief in this country that was founded on almost a mystical kind of belief in opportunity here. We noticed during that generation that they all had a pent-up demand for the good life. And that was a Ming Stole, a Cadillac, a trip to the Copacabana, maybe Las Vegas. The desire for the good life is a very significant feature of first-generation wealth. When people make the first buck in their family's history, they know all about the good things that have been deprived them before. They want it now. And since they made the money themselves, they have a very different attitude towards their disposable income. They think, I've made this, I can make more, I'll do what I want. In China, today, all of this is first-generation wealth or very early second-generation wealth. And what are they creating millionaires once a week or something historically since Deng Xiaoping? And so what we're seeing in China is not a genetic predisposition to gamble. What we're seeing in China is the same thing we saw. My father and my former wife's father, Elaine's father, were both gamblers. They loved to bet on baseball and football and go to a casino. It's part of that first generation of success profile. So anyway, that's still going on.
All right, I'm going to come back to big ideas, but a couple of things. You mentioned Elaine, your wife, who married, then divorced, then remarried, then divorced. Helped you very much in building Win. There's a fight of some kind about membership on the board, her membership on the board, in the interest of news. Where does that stand?
Where it stands is that my company, like most public companies, is controlled really by outside directors. There are 7 members of the board, 8 members of the board, 6 of whom are independent directors. And they decide what the slate of directors are to be when there's an election every year at the annual meeting. And there's proxy statements. The board is required to issue statements on why they change or make selections, and they file proxy statements. The independent directors, I didn't happen to agree with them, but nevertheless...
You didn't agree with them in terms of the board, the slate that they...
I did not. And I'm in an impossibly embarrassing position of either not supporting my former wife, Elaine, which I'm happy to do and obliged to do, or not supporting my board of directors, who are all very, very fine, highly respected, independent men.
Are they all friends of yours?
Well, I've known most of them, some more than others, but, you know, their former governor, Robert Miller, was chairman of the National Governors Association, and before that, the chairman of the National District Attorneys Association, chairman of University of Pennsylvania, Al Shoemaker, and before that, First Boston Corp. Every one of these men are highly regarded. So on this particular issue, I have recused myself, made public my opinion, and I am not commenting on any of this sort of thing because I have nothing constructive to add to the conversation except that it's an uncomfortable position to be in.
Let me talk about a couple of other things, and then we want to talk about back to big ideas and politics, which you have a real interest in. It's the 100th anniversary of Frank Sinatra.
Indeed.
You were his friend.
Yes.
You made commercials with him.
Yes.
Young
enough to be his son.
Yes.
But not.
Yes.
Not old enough to be his running buddy.
Tell me the man you knew.
Sinatra was a fascinating gentleman. everybody knows because of the specials that have been done and, his background, how he came about being Frank Sinatra. What was interesting is this is a fellow professionally, and that was my relationship with him. After all, he performed, quarter after quarter for 5 years. I was fascinated by Sinatra's dedication to excellence. When it came to his craft, the music, the selection of songs, the relationship with the orchestra,
the phrasing,
his vocal presentation, he was a man of meticulous pursuit of excellence. And he had, which I identify with, a tremendous respect for his audience, for his customers. Frank Sinatra was a normal man with normal emotions and temperament like any artist. But when it came to being on stage, Frank rehearsed every time he ever worked, even in his 60s. His selection, I used to ride on the plane with him, and I had the privilege of watching him do the song list. And we had a little routine that was, the first time we went, we had a DC-9, and it had a dining room in the front. And we were having lunch. He carried a briefcase, and in it, the lead sheets with the lyrics of all the songs. He would take out a stack of these things while he was eating the chicken salad sandwich or whatever it was, and he would start leaping through them. He'd make 3 stacks. Yes, no, maybe. And here's September song, yes. New York, New York, yes. My Way, no.
Done it too often. Yes.
One for My Baby, maybe. Luck Be a Lady, no. I was sitting next to him on these side-by-side chairs, and I reached out and I picked up Luck Be a Lady. I said, how could you not sing Luck Be a Lady in a casino? He slapped my hand. He says, don't, you can sit there. Don't ever, ever touch the music. Nobody interferes with the playlist. Don't speak. I said, but he said, don't say a word. And he's got a twinkle in his eye.
Yeah.
But Frank, he said, what are you? What are you, a pest? Don't. And he's got the twinkle, the blue eyes are twinkling. He picks up Luck Be a Lady. Don't ever. And he's wiggling my nose, touch the music. And he puts it over in the maybe. This began a routine that lasted for 5 years. He would wait till we had lunch on the flight back east from Palm Springs, because I had to pick him up and take him home, which got to be a lot of fun because in the second year, Dean Martin joined us. So I would have these weekends with Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin and be on the plane 10 hours. Oh, the stories. And anyway, we had this little choreography that became sort of a family thing where after lunch, he would take out the music and then he would take out Luck Be a Lady and rattle it in my face. And, of course, we play it on the fountains at Bellagio. I play it on the fountains in Macau. And some of the most wonderful memories I have of being with Sinatra. But the thing that I think of professionally is how dedicated he was to the audience and to his trade. I have a vision problem. I don't see very well in the dark. And backstage, he would take my hand in case I couldn't see a step or something. Well, as time went by, he had an apartment at the Waldorf Towers, and I would stay there before Andre and I had our apartment. And we went to lunch once at Gino's on Lexington Avenue. And I said,
Gino's was wonderful. Lexington, about 61st.
Yeah, right. And the hotel's at 51st. We had 10 blocks. It was a beautiful afternoon. I said, let's walk back. He said, okay. He said, I hope we don't get bothered. I said, we'll just walk back on Park Avenue. Charlie, he took my hand like I was 3 years old. Yeah. I was walking down Park Avenue with Frank Sinatra holding my hand, and I was 42 years old. I just kept my mouth shut. I loved it. People would turn around and look at us. It was such fun. Yeah. Those were great years. And Dean Martin, he doted on Dean Martin. He loved him. Frank Sinatra loved comedians. He wasn't a guy that could tell a great joke himself. He loved to tell stories. But when it came to funny guys, whether it was Red Buttons or Don Rickles, he loved being around comedians. Dean Martin was a naturally funny, witty guy who said funny things just right from the shoulder. And Sinatra would egg on Martin to tell Steve what you did when we were making Sergeants 3. Tell Steve what happened when we were doing this movie or that thing. And Martin would tell the stories. He was a laid-back, charming, great guy. And you could see the affection that Sinatra had for Dean Martin. They were completely non-competitive personalities. Sinatra was the alpha, and Dean was happy to just, he was his own guy, but he didn't worry about it.
No one's had a voice like Sinatra before or since.
No, I don't think so. There's some great vocalists, great singers, but Frank brought something. Even today, I listen to him all the time. I know you do, and everybody else does. I remember one night in Connecticut, we did a customer party. We used to go around where we had offices and do parties with our customers, and he and I would take pictures with everybody. And we walked into this place called the Venus de Milo near Fall River, New Bedford. And it was one of these places where you get married. You know, they had different halls. And our group of 150 customers and their wives were in the middle hall. And on the left, there was an event for brownies. You know, the little girls like Cub Scouts before Girl Scouts?
Yes.
And they had roped off the hall so that they wouldn't interfere with us. We came through the door on a frigid January evening, and all of these kids, about 7, 8, 10 years old, were lined up, and Sinatra came through the door, took off his overcoat, and they started screaming. Sinatra was a little stunned, said, "This is marvelous." And he walked over and started, they were younger than his grandchildren, started picking up the kids and kissing them. Yeah. And in that party that night, guys in their late 60s would behave like children and say, "Frank, I love you," and we go around table to table.
Let me talk about the country, too.
Okay, good. Yeah. We could do this all night.
Yes, we could. You're a Republican?
I've been both.
Okay.
I've probably supported more Democrats than Republicans, but lately I have been to the right of the president.
Way
as most
right,
people
some say. I mean, some of your friends worry that you were too tough on the president.
Well, they probably haven't discussed it with me.
Yeah.
I certainly, I was a keynote speaker at the Republican State Convention several years ago.
In Nevada?
In Nevada, in Reno, and I got up and I did my remarks, and I said, my wife and my 2 daughters would never have an abortion, but they believe it's a woman's right to choose. And I said, the reason I'm here today is because my buildings have been highly celebrated, and that was because of my collaboration with a man and others who are gay.
Right.
And so my question is, because I know that citizenship and sexual preference are unrelated, I have to ask the question, is the elephant's back big enough for my friends and my daughters? And I got a standing ovation that day. So I have a mixed political ideology or approach to ideology. But I don't think that's so important, as today we're looking for strategic answers. How do we make the country better? Where is it? You know, everybody has all the rhetoric down dandy. But what we're short on are specific ideas that lead to change that all people would consider as positive. We know in the history of mankind that the only thing that's ever created a better life for human beings is a demand for their labor. Period. There's no exception to that statement. We haven't been around in volume except for the last 10,000 years, if you read Spencer Wells. Really, and we went in 10,000 years since agriculture was invented from a few 100,000 humans on the planet to almost 7 billion now. The demand for labor gives us a better life. Less demand, less better life, until finally when there's no demand, we starve. So that raises a simple issue. What is the role of government? To create an environment where people can have a better life. With that thought, as a society, the most powerful thing that we give to each other in the form of government, to the exclusion of all other things, is the right to tax. We agree to let someone else in a group take our money by mandatory means, if necessary, in taxation. I have noticed a trend in America for the last several decades, more and more, to use the power of taxation as a punishment, as a penalty, instead of as a reward. We know, for example, in things that are too big to punish, training an elephant or a dolphin, you can't punish an elephant or a dolphin. You can only positively reward one. If you try and punish an elephant, it'll kill you. So will a dolphin in the water. We positively reinforce things to get the right behavior. So, for example, considering the power to taxation to be the greatest single weapon that the government has, and I'm just talking about this one element for a moment, let's take two things that are in the public mind these days. Education and healthcare. Those are two big ones. We don't think our kids are being educated well enough. We want to do it better. We don't think that healthcare can continue to be the expense that it is in America. We want to make it better. Let's take those two things and take a look at what's going on right now. We grouse about teachers' unions. We say that they're an obstacle to progress. Well, the fact of the matter is you can bray like a mule at the moon about unions, but people have a right to get together and form a union. And there are good ones, and there are probably bad ones.
You have unions at Winds Resorts?
Always.
Yep.
Never had a grievance in 40 years. Good unions, bad unions, but it's not the government's business about unions. And it wouldn't do any good if they tried. What's interesting is, and this is my notion, for example, to put this in concrete strategy. If I were president of the United States and I had the speaker and the majority leader with me, I'd say, look, we're going to announce this program tomorrow. I'm going to say that in each and every PTA organization and school board in America, they develop their own test on what they think it is, for example, that a third grader should learn about adding, subtracting, and multiplying, or spelling. The school and the parents get together and decide what represents a successful third-degree education. We will acknowledge...
Third-grade education.
Third grade, for example. This would be true of every grade, but let's just pick the third grade. If the teachers in that school get 80% of their students to pass that test, we will give those teachers, on a joint tax return for the spouse and the teacher, $75,000 of tax-free income. If 95% of the students pass the test, we will take that tax-free income to $90,000. You've immediately given every teacher in America a 20% raise. You haven't interfered with unions. You've just caused a whole bunch of kids in college to change their curriculum. And you've sidestepped the unions. Right now, the unions are the protector for a better life of the teacher. Naturally, the people go for their own self-interest and cuddle up to a union. You would and I would too, wherever we see our security. But the minute you make the kids getting a satisfactory test result by local standards a chance to make more money for me, the teacher, then excellence becomes the order of the day. The teacher goes for the prize, for the carrot. If the government's strongest weapon is the power to tax, sometimes the greatest exercise of power is in the restraint of its use. The restraint of the tax collecting power can be the greatest carrot the government has to get socially desirable behavior. Let's take healthcare for a moment. Again, a strategic kind of conversation. We know that third-party payers, when you get your insurance from your employer, like all my employees do, or from the union, which we pay for anyway, or from the government, you don't give a damn what it costs for your doctor, just as long as you don't have to pay for it, as long as it doesn't come out of your pocket. The idea that a third party is paying it leads to a very different mindset between a patient and a doctor. Every expert that has studied the subject says that if we can get people to have a one-to-one relationship economically as well as personally with their doctor, the world would change. So I would say this. Let's say that a man and a woman have a joint income of $100,000 and their tax is 20. I'm inventing the number for a minute, Charlie. I'll correct the arithmetic later. Let's say that the tax bill for this man and his wife is 20 grand. We say, tell you what, you could take $4,000 a year or $3,000 a year of that tax money. You don't have to pay it to Uncle Sam. Put it in the health savings account. Either buy an umbrella policy that's cheap to cover a catastrophic event, and then the rest of it you can administer yourself and pay your doctor one-on-one. The minute you say that after you establish a certain minimum level in that health savings account, you can have the rest of it to spend as you wish, right out of the tax bill, you will immediately change the relationship with people, with their pharmacist, with their doctor. You incentivize the kind of behavior that you know is constructive. We don't, the Affordable Health Care Act, You don't do what we want, you pay a penalty. We punish you. We use the tax
You think
code.
incentive rather than punishment is a better idea?
Much better.
Okay. Let me turn to two other things before I go here.
One other thing, Charlie.
Okay, go ahead.
Charlie, energy policy. America's strategic role and the geopolitical world order would be dramatically affected positively if the President of the United States and the Congress decided that we were going to go on a rampage towards exploitation and development of all of our oil and gas reserves. We would, Paulson was here talking to you with his new book. He said, what can we do to strengthen our relationship with China? I've been there for 13 or 14 years. The concept of Pengyo, friend, comes into play. And you do that by making their life better. If America became a big exporter of gas and oil, we would immediately undercut our enemies. We would give pause to Mr. Putin. We would become a co-supplier to Europe. We would also, because we could export oil, lower the price of oil, undermine our enemies in the Mideast, and become a friend to China because they don't have our natural resources. And we would be lightening their load, either if they bought it from us directly or if they bought it from the Saudi Arabians at a lower price, because between Canada, Mexico, and the United States, we could have a North American petroleum export group that is bigger than OPEC.
That's all true, but at the same time, that there are a lot of people in the country who are very worried about climate change, and that they believe that fossil fuels have contributed to the assault on the environment, and that's another debate.